Greetings, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of depth. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment you are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated just as you are. I deeply believe that we are all creatives. And what I've created for you is a series where we're going to use the same intro each week, but different guests that are going to bring to you specific and moving stories on how they tap into their creativity. All of us carry around what Brene Brown calls creativity scars, where at some point in our lives, usually when we were children, when we were expressing our creativity, usually an adult or someone we cared about shamed us. And it changed the way we viewed ourselves as creatives. My intention for this series is for you to let go of some of that shame and to tap more deeply into the power of your creativity. As I mentioned, each week, I'm going to share with you some fun stories, some powerful stories, some vulnerable stories of people sharing with you their creativity, and most importantly, their invitation to you to step more deeply into your creativity. Like I said, we'll use the same intro, but we're going to have different guests join us each week. So I think that's enough for me. Let's go ahead and jump into our next guest. Here we go. All right. Well, we are jumping into our first of these interviews. Intisar Seraaj is our first of this creative series. So the date today is June 16th. And Intisar, where are you calling in from?
I am in Barbados. So the country part also. There's like goats in the background you can't hear, but they're maying, bang, what do goats do? Yeah.
Awesome. So that would explain for we had mentioned before the image. That's why if folks are noticing it's pixelated, but the audio is great. That's what matters the most to us. So thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Let's start off with describe yourself. How would you describe yourself in 6 words?
I would say confident, creative, passionate, loving, loyal, and trustworthy.
I love it. Where did you pull from to grab those words?
Just literally within my heart right now. But definitely like the things also that make a good friend or partner, things that people look for. But yeah, I'm confident in myself that I am those things.
I can co-sign. I'm co-signing.
Thank you, friend.
So what is a specific story in your life or someone else's that illustrates what it means to be a creative?
So in someone else's life, I follow this spiritual woman on Instagram called the Hood Healer. I don't know if you've heard of her. But so she used to do like readings. She still gives us a little information via Instagram and Twitter, but now she's moved her readings to OnlyFans, which I feel like is an ingenious way to use OnlyFans besides like, for the standard sexualized reasons. But like, okay, if I'm putting out video content instead of just on YouTube, like being paid by advertisers, and before, Patreon, like it's even more, I think, exciting being able to be on OnlyFans, I guess, for something other than, what the intended purposes was. And I thought about like, maybe I could do my poetry on there. You know what I mean? Because like you have the content there and people can just come pay you. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so for what about that for you illustrates what it means to be a creative?
It means that you're gonna like find different ways to do what you need to do and make sure you get your art across or your skill across. and just using the means that the world has already, like to get whatever you're doing across. And I think that is very creative, being able to take something that's like intended for one purpose and use it for another to your benefit. Yes.
It's like Inception. She's doing something creative and then marketing it in a creative way. That's got to like creative within a creative within a creative. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right.
That's awesome. I dig that. So for you, how has your art evolved?
My art evolved. I'm a writer, so my art was just for me, like to get out my emotions, to have fun writing short stories, and now it's evolved into a business, wanting to bring that creative voice out for other people and help other people express themselves, not just myself. So my art has become less selfish, more selfless. Not that it was selfish, really, you know what I mean? But it's like for the people now. So I would say that's how. And then also, of course, writing over and over again, the more you write, the better you get, you know what I mean? And because I went to school for it, because I have editors around the world, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's also improved. that that it's more grammatically correct, maybe, even more intellectual, the more like, I grow as a person. Um yeah, the more like topics I'm able to cover with the more experiences I have. Yeah.
I like that because a lot of times we hear, especially with writing, writer's block. So when you're being paid for it or you're doing it, commercially or as a business, what's the relationship with writer's block when there's like deadlines and all of these things?
Yeah, I definitely get burnout, and sometimes it's funny. My sister can tell at the end of a piece, like if I was getting tired by the end, because I just write, and then at the end I'm like, oh my god, I don't even know how to finish this. So you have to definitely give yourself enough time to meet your deadline so you can have a break. And like I like to write it like I'm gonna finish it, give myself a break, reread it, and I just change a few things, usually the ending and then maybe a few details. Have an editor or two, and then it's great. So you just have to give yourself some time to recuperate and then to let the piece breathe. Because also a lot of times, like even in old to new pieces, like you go back and you look and you're like, oh wow, I could have done this differently. So you give yourself a little time, just for a break.
So if I'm hearing right, that there has to be a project management element to it. So that it's not just writing at the last minute, but you got to give space to come back to it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
When in your process did you realize that? When did you start bringing that into your creative process?
I would say in grad school, when my editors, my teachers would edit me several times, not just like once. I feel like in undergrad where I went, it was a little bit rushed, like when they want to get through the students, they want to give you a little attention, but not as involved as graduate school was at USC for me. So going through multiple edits is like, okay, the more I go through this and they teach you techniques like print it off so you can read it, like it's just something different when you read a hard copy versus online. Take different pens or highlighters, get different people to read it for you. Just, going through the process, you just have to. So yeah, that's when it changed for me in grad school, when I had like to keep going over it again, but in different ways.
How do you get those edits, or how do you get feedback without it being like crushing you or becoming defensive? How do you turn edits and feedback into a positive like you're sharing?
First, you have to be confident in your work and know who you are as a writer, because a lot of editors might tell you something and that's just not you. And like for instance, in grad school, this is like it's small but it's major. Like you're only seeing now publications capitalize the the word black to describe like as a ethnicity or race, whatever, which is a contract anyway. But it's like, okay, if I'm capitalizing Caucasian or Asian or whatever, but y'all are calling us black, why aren't you capitalizing the B? So I fought for that in grad school. Like my teachers were like, oh, lowercase it. And I was like, no. Like I'm listening to your other edits. So you just have to have discernment and like know yourself and then still understand when they're telling you something good. And you can always go second, check it again or whatever. But yeah, certain things you'll just know, like, okay, yeah, I didn't know about all these grammar rules. I'm new to AP style or whatever it is, or MLA, whatever you're using. But so yeah, you also have to be humble, I guess, when you're taking criticism and feedback. Something I'm still working on, taking criticism. Because sometimes, yeah, your writing is also your baby, like creative, like anything you're creating is your child and you're like very protective over it and you have a vision of like how you want it to be. So you just have to also be willing to, like an actual parent, willing to let your child leave the nest and like grow up. And so it's your child is never going to turn out exactly how you want them to. So that's kind of like with your work also. Like sometimes you just kind of give it to the person you're doing it for, give it up to God. You did what you're supposed to do, and they might want a few tweaks, and you just got to make the customer happy, you know?
I love that. What inspires you?
People inspire me, just like everyday people, the tenacity they have to like wake up day after day and do whatever they have to do, and living this difficult but beautiful life. And nature absolutely inspires me, just like everything that God wants to teach us is absolutely in nature if we just reflect and observe and, quiet, patient, all that.
How can you tell the difference though? Like, between this specific emotion I'm feeling now or this specific experience I'm having right now is one of inspiration or being inspired.
In your body, you know what I mean? When you're allowing yourself to not be so overly stimulated by our cell phones, by social media, if you're just like in one of those moments, even if you are on social media, you'll still feel it in your body. You know what I mean? Like that gut feeling, those butterflies, something in your brain just sparks, or you're like, oh, I never thought about that, or I never looked at that way, or, you just know in your body when you're used to, I guess, or some people do need to get in the practice of listening to themselves more. But when you're not afraid of the quiet of listening to God, then you'll get there.
Inshallah. One thing that kind of reminds me of, we were talking about deadlines and your business your art evolving, that it's creative work and business. You hear a lot of creatives say that they only can write or they can only create when they're feeling inspired. What are your thoughts on that, especially as someone who does this as a business?
So, like I said earlier, people also inspire me. So, thank God my business is centered around just the human life. You know what I mean? So, yeah, me being naturally inspired by that works for my art form. So, yeah, when I hear people's life stories, when I hear their experiences, I'm automatically re-inspired. It doesn't matter like how burnt out I am at that moment. Like I can take a little rest, but I'm very much inspired by this person's story in their life.
I love that. If you could create one impact or change one thing about society with your art, what would it be?
I would want people to, I guess, have more empathy for other people and like cut out the jealousy and the nastiness and just the harm that we do to each other. You know what I mean? Because like we all have these experiences, um, but you never know, until you really take the time to get to know someone. And then I also would, can I have two? I would also want people to like take their family seriously and their lineage, and not just walk about the earth like, oh, like I don't need to talk to my elders because they'll be here, or like that's so old, like we don't do things like that anymore. But it's just like society could progress a lot faster if we just listen to the elders, listen to each other, and yeah, like we don't have to always start from the bottom, like let's continue to build, because generational wealth is more than just material and money.
It's also what?
It's also about legacy. Yeah. And knowing thyself. Like, I'm know thyself real well if I know my grandparents, my great grandparents, etc. Yeah, that's all a part of me. All this energy is flowing down through the generations. Like, it's still me. They are me. I am them. Yeah.
Woo, that one hit me. I love that. That generational wealth is more than just money. It's also our legacy. It's our stories. It's knowing where you come from and having that be gifted from one generation to the next. Whew. I have a feeling that's going to be hitting a lot of us. What at what point did you like have that aha? You know what I mean? Like, where did that come from where you're like, okay, this is boom. You know what I mean?
Um, I don't know, but I will. So much as I hate to do it, I'm gonna have to give the credit to my dad. You know. um, okay, but yeah, he's always talking about keeping family together, and on both sides of my family, we're always big on family reunions and all that. Yeah, especially on my mom's side. I'll give it also to my mom's side of the family. They're very big on like doing family trees and all that, which my dad's side of the family does that too. But yeah, the reunions, I don't know, just I guess being bred and growing up in the way that I did with my family, like just being very serious about each other, getting together every year, every other year, like actually having a conversation, not just like, oh, we're at a barbecue and hardly talking to anybody, we're just playing dominoes, but like we have a banquet and we're like actually having deep conversations and we're sharing stories, doing videos, whatever, talking to our elders. So I think it's just, I don't know, I guess it was just innate from how I was raised. Honestly, I don't know, remember when the moment was for me that it just snapped. Yeah.
What? So you're saying that you write stories, you help people share their stories, and that you want the impact to be that people have more empathy. Can stories do that?
Absolutely. Even when you're reading, just think about the news, right? When you're reading an article, when you're watching the news, whatever, everything is so, all of those news stories, they're meant to be emotionally captivating. You teach us in marketing. Here's a plug for you, Tom, in your marketing course. Now we need to write for emotional responses because that is like people are emotional beings. You know what I mean? So yeah, stories absolutely have that power when you can write it in a way to make people feel. But for me, that's more so just like telling people the truth, because like when I can tell my truth, you're gonna understand like that basic human experience. We get it. Yeah.
I love that. And I love the plug. I'll slip you the PayPal. $15 when we $20, $100 when we get off the call.
Okay.
So I'm walking this journey with you that we want to create empathy. And I'm thinking that there's two primary roles of a story, the storyteller and the listener. What would you want people to, what stories should we be telling more? Or what stories do you want people to be listening to more of? Or what's kind of by the way, your video has just gotten perfect. It's just cleared up.
Oh, I see. Wow.
Oh, it's back. We got like 5 seconds of clarity. There we go. Oh, it's back too.
Right.
What would you, I'm curious what your reflection is on that. You know what I mean? For these two roles, is there any reflections or encouragements that you want people to have around those two roles?
I think we should be listening and telling more stories about, like I said, I mean, not plugging my business, but honestly, I really do believe in this, but listening to more of our elders' stories, you know what I mean? And listening to more, not even just our elders, but just like family members, cousins, or whatever that might be the same age as you, around the same age group. But it's just like, dang, these are the people that we call our family, and family is supposed to mean a certain thing. You know what I mean? You watch these movies, like, or you have this in your head, and people get disappointed, of course, or like, I work in the foster care business also, so it's like, we know the seriousness of a family structure and like what that can do, you know what I mean, when you're not connected to your family. So if we have the privilege of still being aware of who our family is, why not really be aware of who you are and who your family is? You know what I mean? So I think they always, okay, in Islam, right, we say charity starts at home. So I'm going to flip that also, like, or how Michael Jackson even said, like, it starts with the man in the mirror. It's just kind of like that base foundation. So the family is that base foundation. So it's like, if I'm going to have empathy for the rest of the world, if we're going to have world peace or whatever, like, we have to start with our family, because a lot of us have family divides, like, oh, these sisters haven't talked in years over some little petty thing. But it's like, if I sat down and talked to them about their experiences, we wouldn't have that, you know?
What would be your dream collaboration?
Going based off of what I've been saying, also, my dream collaboration, I was like, is Tom gonna let me be creative with this? And I'm gonna take the liberty, because this is about creatives, you know? But so I would say my paternal granddad, because I hear nothing but great things about him from my father and my dad's side of the family. And he just seems like that is where, like, they got their whole concept of family, you know, for me. And I would love to be able to, I never met him. So that's also like, I would love to be able to pick his brain and also get our story down also for the lineage.
That's awesome. Yes. And of course, that's such a great answer. I'm sure this might be an obvious question. Do you have the questions that you'd want to ask?
Oh, to my granddad?
Yeah.
I definitely want to know, sometimes I do like very broad, open-ended questions, right? Because I just want to see where people's mind first take them to, and allow them to, like, feel like, you know, they're guiding the conversation also, because people get very, like, about their personal life, you know? So, but I would ask him, just, you know, tell me about how you grew up, and, like, what were your parents like, and how was childhood for you in the Jim Crow South, you know, all these things. How was it raising 12 children? Like, marrying your wife to save her from abuse, you know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of stuff, you know? And yeah, not afraid to get deep. So he would be getting those hard hitting questions as well.
I love that. What is your invitation to those who are listening? What would you like to invite them to do, to be, to consider, to think about? What is your invitation?
My invitation to y'all who are listening is to take your family lineage more seriously. And I invite you all to start writing your own story, like journaling 10 minutes a day. Even if you start off by just saying what happened to you that day, it can be boring. But the more you start writing, like, the more the habit, you know, that you create, you're going to start doing more reflecting, like reflective journaling. So, but of course, as things happen to you day to day, you'll also write those important things down. And yeah, I just want us to all think about, like, what are the big moments that are shaping me? A lot of us just, like, you know, we're living day to day, and it's very hard to pinpoint sometimes, or be grateful sometimes for the things that are changing us, or the situations that happen to us. Yeah, so just to be more reflective in these areas.
And do you have a prompt people could start with if they want to tonight? I'm going to sit down. I'm going to take Intisar up on this. I'm going to journal. Do you have a prompt for them?
Tonight, if you're going to journal, your prompt could be, when is the last time I cried? I always think that's very interesting, because, like, we talk about how stories are supposed to be moving, emotional, you know? We talked about that. So, yeah, when's the last time you cried? Like, why? What hit you like that?
Intisar, if people want to hit you up and tell you how awesome this is, to hire you to tell their story, whatever it is, where can they do that?
You can find me at byseraaj.com, BYSERAAJ.com, and the same handle on Twitter and Instagram, by Seraaj. Yeah, and byseraaj@gmail.com.
And how would you describe the conversation we just had in one word?
Impactful.
Yes, indeed. Intisar, I appreciate you so much. This was amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful. And such an aha. I just love, I'm taking away for sure the power of journaling, that we have a responsibility to tell our stories so that they can continue on to the next generation and to hear the stories of those who came before us. And that is the kind of generational wealth no one can take away from you, no matter what happens. And so I really love that. That was a gift. You really shared a gift with us. So I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Of course. All righty. Well, thank you, Intisar. We will then jump into our next guest. So thank you.
Welcome.
We have our next guest. We are recording this today on June 30th. Our next guest is one of my, hopefully I can say this, great friends, many past guests, Mitch Monico. What's going on, Mitch?
Hey, how you doing? I almost feel like we need to say 2021. I was talking to somebody earlier and they said 2020 and I was like, oh, wait, no, that's over, right?
Yes, we are safely in 2021. Thank God. It's been quite a year, to say the least. Yeah. Mitch, for the folks who don't know you, how would you describe yourself in 5 to 6 words?
I would say laughter gets me through it.
I love that. Some folks are giving like a list, here's 6 different words. Some folks are giving a sentence. So I like the diversity of answers we're getting.
Yeah, I'm a writer, so maybe I'm thinking in sentence structure. I don't know.
Break it down for me. How did you come up with that one?
The thing that people most say about me is that like I'm always laughing and I'm always smiling. So, which isn't true at all. But that said, I think that it is the thing that I put out in the world, the energy I put out in the world. And so that's what I thought. All right, let's just go there.
So, because it sounds like a personal, like almost like the way I interpret it is like tough times, good times, I'm going to laugh through it. Is that how I should interpret it?
I mean, I really do. It's not to say I don't get angry or sad or all the other emotions that are on the thing, but yeah, I mean, I want to laugh, when it comes down to it. If I'm down, I really would like to get to that place where I can find the humor, because I know that point is coming, the difficulties, the tough stuff. At some point, I'm going to be able to laugh at it.
Is, in this instance, laughter almost synonymous with like gratitude?
You could say that. I mean, sure. Yeah. I feel that it is a form of gratitude. It's a form of healing, and it helps I feel like it not just helps me, but others around me too. When you laugh, it's a little bit infectious in the way we used to mean infectious, I mean, you know what I mean. Not COVID infectious.
Yes, no, I know.
Yeah, it's a bad COVID joke.
I like it. We're keeping it.
I am not a comedian, by the way. So laughter does not get me through anything in terms of stand-up.
Well, let's jump in then to the creative way that you like to express yourself. What's a story that specifies or represents for you what it means to be a creative?
I was really thinking about this, and it's a story. The story that came up for me was one that doesn't really feel specifically creative. However, it was a story of when I came out to my father and his wife as transgender. And it happened in a New York City downtown office building because I was editing my feature film Alto at the time. And so I was there like editing, and my father and his wife had come into town. We had walked to Little Italy and gotten cannoli and coffee and, the whole nine. And my sister and my producer were also there. We were sitting around a table just kind of having dessert. And they were getting ready to leave. And I was like, oh, no, you can't leave yet. There's something I want to tell you. And my producer and my sister, both of whom knew, just looked at me like, you're not really doing this now, are you? And I was like, yeah, we're doing this now. So I wound up coming out to them, and we continued eating coffee, cannoli. My dad gave me a hug. He was grateful I didn't have throat cancer because my voice was changing and he didn't know why. And, it was really just, the reason that I say that this evokes creativity for me is that at the end of it, I had to go back to editing the film. They left, it was over, it was done. I had to go back to editing the film. But it's also illustrative of, the fact that for me, family, art, my Italian American identity, it's all intertwined. Like I can't pull out the strands from what is, what makes me the creative person I am. It's all in there. And hopefully it all comes out in my work.
I appreciate you sharing that with us. It's such an intimate, personal story that you started there with us. I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. It really, that was the first story that came to mind when you said talk about creativity, because it was such a moment for me where I was anxious, but I also couldn't just detach from my family. I couldn't detach from my creative self. And we were eating cannoli. So, there's the Italian American part.
So I'm hearing you that you were immersed in a creative process, and it pulls in so many parts of who you are, which is what goes into your creativity. Is there anything that you think it says about what creativity is, kind of like in a bigger picture?
I would say that, people always think like, who are you, if you write something, who are you in what you write? And I am, the thing I tell them is like, I am in everything that I write, every character that I write, there's a part of me. And so I feel for me, creativity is so intrinsic to who I am that when it's reflected outward, whether it be in characters or however, whatever kind of creativity I'm doing, it just reflects what's inside of me. Like, it's like bringing the inner part of me out and sharing it with the world, which is terrifying, but it's also the only way I know to figure out things, to grow. Like, without writing, I would not have grown to be who I am today or who I'm going to be tomorrow. Like, it's just part of it for me.
A couple of things it brings up for me, and I'm curious your thoughts, that like we have to know who we are, but the risk, the vulnerability, the courage it takes in owning who we are and then sharing who we are with people when maybe they're not quite getting it right or they don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would even like challenge that a little bit, because I think it's also about like sharing when you don't know exactly who you are, sharing. That's where for me, the real vulnerability comes in, is when I'm trying to figure something out. And a lot of times I try to do it on the page. And I don't necessarily know it, like themes for me will come afterwards, it's like, oh, that's what I was writing about. But so that kind of sharing what's inside, bringing it out, but not really knowing as you're writing, what it is exactly that you're bringing out until it surfaces.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, or until you share it with others. Yeah.
I love this. So creativity is itself a self-exploratory process and can reveal and explore parts of ourselves that maybe we didn't have the ability or courage or access to exploring, but also maybe the processing where I can see, oh, I didn't realize this about myself. Am I hearing that right?
Totally hearing that right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's why storytelling is such an intrinsic part of being human. Like there's a reason we evolved this way.
Can you expand upon that?
Well, I think that, almost everything we do involves storytelling in some way, whether it's stories that we tell ourselves or stories we're telling others, or, and not just, sitting around and talking with people. That's one kind of story, but looking at somebody a certain way or judging a certain person is a story. There's stories behind it. There's stories, as to why. And so I feel like, as humans, we've evolved to share ourselves with each other via story.
So for you, is the self-exploratory process of creativity, is it intentional? Like I am setting out to find something new about myself, or is it like whether I want to or not, I'm going to find something new about myself?
That is it. You got it. That's the one. I pick B. Yes, often it is kicking and screaming, and I really just wish I could write anything else, but I can't right now. So, okay, I guess I've got to go into this deeper.
Do you think then for some people, writer's block is almost like an emotional block of not wanting to find out who I am past where I'm at now?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure there are books on that. I am confident there are books written about that. And often the thing is often we don't realize it. We just don't realize that's why we're getting stuck. We think it could be this other thing, or maybe I mean, I've had this happen to me recently, is that there was something in the book that had stopped me character development wise from finishing, or not from finishing, but from revising to a way that felt good. And it wasn't until I kind of opened up and had this dialogue with the character and figured out, well, what's holding me back? And it's still kind of holding me back. Like it's still in there. So it's a process. It's an evolution. And as I grow as a person, I can bring more of that to the page.
I love this. So when we might be saying, oh, I just don't have the inspiration, it might be that there's something I'm afraid of that and I'm going to discover about myself.
Often. Yeah, often. It's just fear stops us from doing so much in life. And I think if we can, take the time to kind of look at our fears and examine them for what they are and kind of hold them up to the light so they're not as scary, we grow. We push ourselves, we grow.
Ooh, this is nice. This is a nice aha. I hope y'all are enjoying this aha. This is real nice. How would you say your art has evolved?
Sometimes it really does feel like it's devolved. And I just say that, I say that because art is so much like a roller coaster. For me, the creation of art is so much like a roller coaster that, sometimes it feels like I'm 50 steps behind, and other times I've just taken a rocket to another planet. But I would say, I would say that I have evolved in terms of my process. For instance, when I was primarily writing scripts, I wasn't as responsible as I am now as an author writing novels, where I am now every department, and not like in an indie film way where you only have one or two people in the department, but in a real, honest to goodness, it is up to you to be costumes and makeup and, setting, and everything is on you to create. So you are now every department. That's basically what I tell myself as an author. I am now every department. So welcome to it. And it's a lot more dense for me, the process. It's hard. I mean, any kind of writing really can be difficult, but I'm finding it very challenging.
I was curious about that. And the first time you were on the podcast was with Sean, and it was a film that I believe you wrote and directed, right?
Yes, Alto, I think you're talking about. Yes. Not the one that I wrote with Sean, right? But you're talking about the one I did, the independent feature film.
Where he was a superhero. What was that?
No. That is actually a pilot that we are still in the process. It's still out there somewhere. And we're going to do something small with it. We're going to shoot something small with it. So that's still out there too.
But still, with Alto, with all of them, it's more you're directing, writing, and now you're mostly writing books. So I was curious where that change came from.
I think it came from a realization that I wanted to have more ability to get stuff out in the world faster, and not be dependent on raising a ton of money and, all the things that come with making a film. I still love the form. And I still am writing scripts, teleplays, whatever you want to call them. But I'm also just more invested right now in novel writing, because it feels like something that can be put out in the world faster.
I'm sort of chuckling to myself as somebody who records, my main form of putting out there is podcast episodes. With that episode you all did, I think you came to my house on a Thursday. We had it out by a Monday. That to me is quick. And you're calling a novel. You're like, I wanted to get my stuff out there faster. So I chose writing a novel. I'm like, that's faster.
That when it comes to comparing that to making a feature film, any day I'll take it. Feature filmmaking, just, especially if you're directing and involved, it lasts years. And writing a novel does too. I don't know who I'm kidding. It's probably just, I've kidded myself for to believe that there's something about this that is faster. It's really not. I'm sure it's not.
Maybe what I'm hearing is there's more control and autonomy in it going out. So it's, you don't have to raise millions just to shoot one scene. Like you just write it. If you want, you can self-publish it. You don't have to have as many gatekeepers. Is that kind of what I'm hearing then?
Yes, I think that is what you're hearing, and I do like that. And I like the fact that there's so many other options out there now for putting your stuff out there. So many other ways that you can do it. I think of like, okay, yes, I'm writing a novel right now, but what else can I do with it? Like, how else can I frame this? I'm even still thinking about my feature film, like that I had done. I was thinking, well, what else can I do with it? I want to turn it into a musical or, a TV pilot or any of the other ways that are out there. And there are so many now, ways to be creative and get your work out there in ways that, pre-computers and maybe the last 5 years, even, we weren't able to get ourselves out there in the same way. We weren't able to create, now they have no code apps that you build and all kinds of things where you don't need to know coding language in order to create. So I'm fascinated by it all and I'm hungry for it all. So I'm always looking for different ways to tell the same story and what it means to tell the same story in different methods, in different media.
What would you say inspires that hunger, that creativity, that desire to tell the story and to tell it in many different ways and to explore? What inspires you?
I think there's two, it's almost like a separate question. Like, I think what inspires me creatively is, like I love reading. I love observing people, just watching people. It's just a little odd to say, but I do. I really just, if I'm on the train or a bus or whatever, I just enjoy taking in what people are doing and what it means for them in their lives. Sometimes I'll write things, I'll be like, oh my gosh, that really made me feel something. Now, why did I feel something? What was the emotion? What was the driver? And then how can I use that in my own writing? So that's inspiring to me. I also love live music. I love theater. But I think the question that you're asking, and this I can answer, is like the thing that really drives me is my own mortality. Like, honestly, the fact that I don't know how long I'll be here and asking myself, what is it that I want to leave when I'm not here anymore to represent myself?
So I'm hearing maybe I'm on like the surface, still deep answer, but on the surface, observation, the deep core is legacy.
Yeah. I think I try to remember my ancestors in the work that I do and give thanks to them for allowing me to be here now. But I don't know what the next generation or two generations. I feel like we're lucky if we get remembered 2 generations. And so for me, writing is a way to leave some form of myself behind.
And then when people Google you, they'll see my podcast. So I'm right there with you.
For sure.
I want you to be famous so I can show up when they Google your name.
It's so interesting. You know, I was reading, well, that's a separate story, and we're on a time, so I'm going to cut that.
You can't do that. Go for it. Go for it. Tell us what you were reading.
No. Yeah, it's all right. We'll go on. We'll move
okay,
on.
Another time. If you could create one impact or change society in some way with your art, how would you want it to go? What would it be?
I think that really I would like to help people talk with each other about difficult issues in productive ways. And I think that's not just people who differ politically or people who differ religiously or any of the other kind of, I think it ties back to my last answer in terms of talking about like life and death, the meaning of life, why it's important that we're here, and why it's important what we give to each other. So I think that can help bridge gaps. I think we're human. We're always going to have differences with each other. But what's really been disturbing to me is kind of seeing how incapable people have become of communicating with each other and seeing the humanity in the other person while they're doing it.
I love that. I've asked this question to a lot of people, and I've thought what would be my answer. And that's one of mine too. Like if there could be one gift I could give the world or to like everybody to have is the ability and the emotion, like the tools and the emotional, whatever needed to have difficult conversations. It's like the game changer in business, family, life, relate. Can you sit through a tough conversation? I love that answer.
Yeah. I would also like it to, because believe me, I can avoid tough conversations with the best of them. So I would like it to change me as well. We write what we need to learn.
Yeah. It pops up in unlikely places. Once you see that was me avoiding a tough conversation.
There you go.
What would be a dream collaboration if you could have one?
Let's see. I was thinking, this kind of relates to the story I was going to tell, but I think for me, a dream collaboration would be with a writer who died like maybe, I don't know, several decades ago or maybe a century ago, but somebody who had wanted to be a writer, but for whatever reason, whether they had to work or they had kids or whatever the reason was, they weren't able to fulfill that dream for themselves. I would love to kind of collaborate with that person and write a novel, right there, the novel with them that they never got to write.
This is not a competition, but that is a great, great, great answer. I love that. What a nice person. You are such a nice person.
Well, I think it kind of ties back to the story that I was going to tell earlier, is that I had been reading this article about a woman who had talked about writing a book and hadn't written a book. And I just thought, well, what if you could write with that person? What if you could do that? It seems like a very, not just a way to connect, but a way to help others live out their dreams too. Like that's part of what this is about. It's like sharing and inspiring others to live out, fulfill their purposes on this earth.
And look at that. You snuck the story in. You resolved it for us. What a great storytelling device. Cliffhanger resolved. Well done. Well done.
Can I do that in my mystery novel? I hope I can.
Mitch, where can folks connect with you so they can get the books you already have written and the book that's going to come out? Where can they do that?
I would say mickidell.com. It's MIKKIDEL.com or at Mickey Dell on any of the social media platforms.
Indeed. Yes, indeed. And what would be your invitation to those who are listening? What do you want to invite them to do, to be, to consider, to think about? What's your invitation?
I think, I would invite people to think about their gender identity in ways that challenge it. because I feel like we don't often do that enough. And so I would I would challenge people to think about what parts of their gender identity feel authentic to them, and which parts do they feel they've learned because, that's what society teaches, or that's what their family taught, or whatever. So just kind of to challenge yourself on that. I think for myself personally, I just want, I think about it, obviously, but I just think I want to be the best version of myself. And so I'm constantly asking, is that behavior something I'm doing because I think I need to, or is it because it's something that I feel inside? So that would be my challenge, I guess.
What a wonderful invitation. Mitch, I appreciate you so much. Literally, my next interview starts in 1 minute. Otherwise, I would just ask you 20 more questions. There's so many more that come up. So let's get you back here for a full-length interview, especially when your book's coming out, so we can help promote it.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you so much, Tom. I love talking to you always.
Same here. I appreciate you. And let's go for a hike or something.
Sounds good.
All right, my friend. See you soon.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I hope our guests from this week allowed you to find new avenues and new ways of thinking about creativity. Creativity isn't just for those who self-describe themselves as artists. All of us have ways that we are profoundly expressing our creativity every single day. And I hope my guests today helped you to connect more deeply with your creativity. I'd love to know your thoughts on this week's episode. You can reach out to me at Tom Earl Artist on all social media, tom@tomearl.com via email, or if you'd like to learn how you can use your creativity in your marketing, in your Facebook and Instagram ads specifically, we have a ton of resources for you. You can find by going to tomearl.me/ads, tomearl.me/ads. My friends, it has been an honor. I am so grateful for you sharing your most powerful resources, your time and energy with me. And as always, I'm wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.